Hello, Ghost of Lilacs here to welcome you back to the $1,000,000 Pizza Challenge. This series was recorded after the 1.6 update. I'm playing on the Nintendo Switch with 0 mods. If you missed a previous episode, here's a recap. There are many pizza-related Stardew challenges. This is my own with my own set of rules. All you need to know right off the bat is that my goal is to have 1 million gold, cash on hand, not total earned. All of the rules are outlined in the description box below if you'd like to take a closer look at them. Let's get started. The air was cool and the leaves had started to fall from trees on day 1. I began the arduous task of scything my weeds and planting my wheat. I crafted the final group of preserve jars needed to fill my large shed. I placed the extras around the entrance. I rode into town and picked up a special order request from Caroline, Island Ingredients, where Mrs. Pierre requested I ship 100 ginger. I'm not going to be actively looking for them, but if I see them while running around the island, I'll pick them up. I was off to Clint's, and the blacksmith opened some geodes for me. 2 jamborite were found inside, and I donated the missing mineral to the museum. I returned to my farm and crafted a rain totem. I needed 1 fish to complete the collection, and that required a rainy fall day. That evening, I scoured the frigid levels of the mines in search of frozen geodes. I left home with 3. The hypnotic drumming of raindrops on my farmhouse roof were so soothing on day 2, I almost didn't want to get out of bed. I had only a few farm chores that morning, so I crafted a statue of blessings that will grant a unique blessing every day. Mayor Lewis requested a Joja Cola, and I knew just the place to get one. I turned in the quest for a measly 75 gold. Cheapskate. I visited Penny and wished her a happy birthday. Some poppies had bloomed with summer sunflowers, so I gifted her one. They are one of her favorites, and I'm afraid the kind gesture reduced her to tears. That afternoon, I strolled to the mountain lake, where I fished up the walleye, the last fish needed to complete the collection. I still don't enjoy fishing, but it sure feels good to see all of the fishies filled in. I was back to the chilly mine floors for the rest of the afternoon and evening. I left with 6 frozen geodes and 2 omni geodes. Fingers crossed I can finish the mineral collection next. Before I got started on day 3, I took the chocolate cake I'd made out of the fridge so I could deliver it to Haley's Cakewalk later that morning. I had received a letter from Willie with a star drop included for catching all of the fish. The fisherman doesn't have any children of his own, and he wanted to pass it down to me. He's so sweet. With little to do around the farm, I headed into town for the cakewalk. Haley put a lot of time into organizing participants and cakes to raffle off. She raised 5,000 gold. George dared to suggest my saint of a wife was going to selfishly spend the money on a new handbag. I tell ya, they had to hold me back after hearing that. Fortunately, my pink cake princess is not the hothead I am, and she calmly explained that the funds were going to be used for new school books for the children. I love her! Robin and good friend Pierre asked Mayor Lewis if this meant their business tax would be reduced since education wasn't covered by the town coffers, and Greedy Guts looked distraught. After the cakewalk finished, I delivered a coconut to Sleepyhead Sebastian before Clint broke apart my geodes. All duds. I picked up another deluxe fish tank from Willie and headed to Ginger Island. So many crops were ready to harvest, and I sold all of my pineapples. This was going to be a fantastic payday. I returned home and set up my new fish tank with my island fish and the legend. Before heading to bed, I refilled my preserve jars. Fiber was ready to harvest on day 4. I took the fiber I had harvested and crafted more grass for my barnyard buddies to graze. Tomorrow, my wheat would be ready, but until then, I had some free time. Feeling lucky, I traveled to the desert, where I dove into the skull caverns. I found a blue cowboy hat that I had to try on. I also came across an auto petter. If you're a Joja member like I am, these are available for purchase, but I'd rather not use it. I love my barnyard buddies, and petting them makes them happy, so I'm happy to do it myself. I left around midnight, having reached level 79. Among my goodies, I had collected 13 rubies. I traded them for more spicy eel. I also found a prismatic shard, 6 dino eggs, and 26 omni geodes. On day 5, my wheat was ready to harvest. I harvested an area, then replanted, until I ran out of seeds. I took a break to ask Clint to crush some geodes for me. All duds. While I was in town, I bought 1,000 wheat seeds and a Joja light. I stopped by Elliot's Sea Shack and wished the writer a happy birthday. I surprised him with crab cakes, one of his favorites. I finished harvesting and planting my wheat and dumped it into the mill. I'll have a ton of flour to sell tomorrow. Earlier, I had picked up a fetch quest from Mayor Lewis. I delivered the frozen tear he had requested and exchanged a prize token for a pig picture. I headed into the mines for the rest of the evening, and while I found a prismatic shard, I didn't find many geodes. I awoke on day 6 with a letter from Gus requesting a lobster. I had collected one from my crab pots ages ago and had it waiting in my fish chest, so I'll have to drop it off the next time I'm in town. My preserve jars were ready, and I refilled them. Before I refilled my dehydrators, I could have sworn I saw the cursed mannequin vibrating. I purchased 101 bombs from the dwarf and headed to the Skull Caverns. The blessing I chose from the statue of the Dwarf King that morning increased the likelihood of finding geodes. While I could have focused on specific floors at the local mines, there were still some monster eradication goals I could work on at the desert. I battled many beasties and left with 46 Omni Geodes. In the past, day 7 has been a pretty lucky day for me on Pizza Farm, and today was no different. I finished my farm chores very early and felt drawn to the cinder sap forest. The traveling cart lady was selling a squid, and as soon as I saw it, I had a plan for a new farm decoration. I returned to my farm and put a sunflower into my oil maker to create regular cooking oil. While I waited for it to process, I delivered a salmon to Jody to complete a fetch quest. I asked Clint to crush some geodes for me, and there were 2 prismatic shards inside. I was losing hope of finding anything for the museum when some granite appeared. I donated it to the museum. I only have 1 mineral left to find, an opal. These can be found in frozen geodes and omni geodes, so I'll be on the lookout. I traveled to the desert to pick up more spicy eel and staircases. I stopped at the desert oasis and purchased a retro rainbow shirt from Sandy. When I returned home, the oil was ready. I assembled my ingredients: oil, flour, and a squid. I cooked up some calamari. I used the squiddy dish and some cloth to craft the store owner's jacket. That certainly looks familiar, doesn't it? Like something a good friend would wear, maybe? I set up an display on my farm in dishonor of my good friend Pierre. I added some goggles and a sign to express his love for big box stores. I returned to the desert and played in the caverns for a bit, hunting for geodes. I found a holiday shirt and left with 20 Omni Geodes. Once I finished my farm chores on day 8, I had Clint crack open my geodes, and they were all duds. I traveled to Ginger Island where peppers, tomatoes, and pineapples were ready to harvest. I crafted some monster musk to attract beasties and some mega bombs. I took the bus to the desert to dive into the caverns. The monster musk lured out the baddies, and that evening I reached a monster eradication goal for slaying Pepper Rex dinosaurs. I left the desert with 26 Omni Geodes. I traveled to the Adventurers Guild and picked up the arcane hat and knight's helmet. Just as I was heading for bed, my preserve jars were ready. I didn't bother refilling them. I just grabbed the goods and I passed out on the floor outside of my bed. On day 9, I felt richer somehow. I felt a wealth of gratitude for my wife and my farm. I woke up a millionaire. I should have done more to celebrate my success. After all I had struggled, I had suffered, I had worked myself to the point of exhaustion for this moment. How did I commemorate reaching my goal? I got to work harvesting my wheat, turning it into flour, and replanting it. I stopped by Clint's, and the museum is still incomplete. I cleaned up a bit of my farm. I have a plan that I will start working on tomorrow. My farm chores were finished early on day 10. I rode up to Robbins and purchased a furniture catalog. I was going to need this to enact the final part of my millionaire's plan. I had wanted this for ages, and now I finally had the money for it. I purchased some recipes for lighting and pathing. I also requested a shed to be built on my farm. This wasn't going to be for kegs or dehydrators or preserve jars. It was going to be for something else, something pizza related. The Dwarf King statue had offered a geode blessing, so I took the bus to the desert. I doused myself in monster musk, and boy were the beasties angry. I wouldn't have my shed ready for a few days, so I might as well have some fun and grind for monsters and geodes. I found an orange bow shirt that afternoon, and I left at level 59 with 52 Omni Geodes. Surely there's going to be an opal inside of one of these. Right? I had so many truffles on day 11, it seemed like my pigs were working extra hard, knowing that they wouldn't be able to dig around outside once winter arrived. I surprised Jody with one of her loved gifts for her birthday, a diamond. Clint smashed my geodes, and you'll never believe it, but there wasn't an opal among the minerals! I tried some retail therapy and bought a bunch of mega bombs from the dwarf, before dousing myself in monster musk and heading to the skull caverns. That evening, I completed a monster eradication goal by slaying serpents. I only had one goal left, and that involved the dreaded volcano dungeon. Boo. I found a crop top. I wonder which monster was wearing it. I returned home having reached level 77 with 67 Omni Geodes. I really hope one of these has an opal inside. On the morning of day 12, my preserve jars were ready. I refilled them and headed to Clint's. If you guessed that I didn't obtain an opal, you'd be correct. The bookseller was in town, so I traded in some duplicate books and purchased a few more. The Way of the Wind will help me run a bit faster, Horse the Book will speed up my steed Diane, and the price catalog will allow me to see the price of items before I sell them. I was off to my island farm, where pineapples, peppers, and tomatoes were all ready to harvest. This was going to be a massive payday from the pineapple alone. It was supposed to be a day with lots of geodes in the mines, so instead of going to the desert, I stayed in the local mines. I left with 2 Omni Geodes and 16 frozen geodes. Fingers crossed this wasn't a waste of time. My wheat was ready to harvest on day 13. I needed more seeds, so I headed into town, where I gifted Abigail an amethyst, one of her loved gifts for her birthday. I purchased my wheat seeds and headed to the mountains to order a shed upgrade from Robin. I dipped back down to Clint's, where the blacksmith cracked open my frozen geodes. And then it happened. An opal in all its iridescent glory. Before donating the opal, I made a stone sign with my opal to celebrate the discovery. I donated the final mineral to the museum and obtained a star drop for its completion. I returned home and planted my wheat. I cleaned up my farm a bit before heading to bed. I didn't have much to do around the farm on day 14, so I headed to Ginger Island. I didn't have any crops ready, so I doused myself in monster musk and headed into the volcano dungeon. I fought beasties, and on level 5 I purchased a pink bow. A glance in my inventory indicated I had picked up a decorative lantern at some point. And what in the yabba dabba? Yeah, I picked up a caveman shirt too. When I returned home, my preserve jars were ready. I'd refill them tomorrow. I also had a bunch of truffles that needed to be processed, so I got those started. That night, Sausage gave birth to a baby pig. I named them Oregano. Day 15 was spent working on my secret project. Day 16 was the last day I documented my time in the valley. I had achieved my goal to earn 1 million gold cash from pizza-related products. I also caught all of the fish and completed the museum, but those were never my true goals. But somehow, along the way, I completed those too. I wasn't going to stop there. I wanted to give back to the community my grandpa had loved. I wanted to share my passion and love for pizza with Pelican Town. So I made my own pizzeria on Pizza Farm. It was a humble place, with enough seats for everyone in town to dine if they wanted. Even a crooked mayor or a stingy shopkeeper. You know, I still had that first pizza I ever cooked. I had kept it in a chest this entire time, because I didn't want to eat a pizza until everyone could have one. So that night, I ate my first pizza. It was everything I could have hoped for. So if you're ever in Pelican Town and looking for a hot pie, I've got the best in town. Just stop by Pizza Farm. I'll keep a table open for you. If you enjoyed this series and want to see more like it, please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. Please leave your comments and suggestions down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.